Hey, welcome to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy. John Wick Chapter 4 is the latest installment in the franchise, and it's by far one of Wick's best adventures yet, with one heck of a cryptic ending. The final scene shows John whispering his wife's name as he collapses, followed by Winston standing over his grave. So, we're going to explain that ending and the post-credits scene and what all of this means for the John Wick franchise, but we're also going to dive into the meaning and symbolism of this story, because when you look at all 4 chapters put together, it's pretty clear that John's really dead, and we're going to explain why that's actually the best thing that could happen to these movies. Now, it's hard to believe that somebody so unkillable has actually finally bit the dust, especially since we've seen John on death's door so many times before. So if you're skeptical about whether or not the Baba Yaga is really dead, we've got answers.
Positive?
Oh no.
Seems pretty obvious to me. We saw his tombstone and everything. But wasn't John Wick 5 already greenlit for a production?
Well, yes and no. In 2020, Lionsgate revealed plans to have chapters 4 and 5 filmed back to back, but that didn't really work out. In an interview with comicbook.com, director Chad Stahelski stated, "Sometimes you need that creative breath to come up with fresh shit. Otherwise, I'm stressed about making 2 movies instead of 1 really good movie. I think it would be unfair to our fan base and unfair to the property in general to just stretch it out for the sake of efficiency or financial creative efficiency. I'd rather do it, take a breather, get our shit together, analyze mistakes, and see what worked and what didn't."
Well, that explains why they didn't film them back to back, but the rest is clear as mud. Is he making another movie or not?
Well, Doug the manager, it's open speculation at this point, but we do know there are 2 series based on the franchise that are currently being produced, The Ballerina and The Continental. The Continental series is a TV series on Prime Video, and The Ballerina is a film that takes place in the same universe between chapters 3 and 4. Similarly, The Continental takes place in the mid-70s and follows Winston's origins, but filming may become complicated with the recent passing of Lance Reddick, R.I.P. Keanu confirmed that John does have at least a cameo appearance in The Ballerina, and it's possible that we could see a younger Wick in The Continental. Both are scheduled to drop later this year, but neither will confirm whether or not John is alive or dead after Chapter 4.
I thought you said you had all the answers.
I do, personally.
I'm positive he did.
For a few reasons. His story has come full circle. The torch has been passed and it fits the themes of the other films. The story of John Wick is one big game.
I want to play a game.
The films gamify the world they exist in by providing strict rules that must be followed in order to play.
2 rules that cannot be broken, Jonathan.
And breaking said rules not only results in severe consequences, but also severs you from future participation.
Mr. Wick broke the rules.
Oh, yes.
Heck, the whole operation is coin-operated like some high-class assassin arcade. In the first films, it seems like the underground assassins are the only ones playing while the real world exists behind them. But chapters 3 and 4 show just how big this game really is. John's abilities and gun skills give off major first-person shooter vibes, hence this scene from the first film. Now these screenshots are from the game Project Legion, and side note, his in-game username is Neo, and the characters he's fighting are named Badass and Point Break. In Chapter 4, we see many games being played out. John's poker game with Killa, the card game that he plays to decide the rules of the duel, and even the duel itself are all games we see played out on screen. Another huge game reference is the fight scene that we see shot from the top down. This is a clear reference to the cult classic game Hotline Miami, which also uses this top-down perspective and revolves around a lone badass taking down Russian mobsters. Having these direct video game references bookend the beginning and end of the series makes it seem as if John's game has finally played out.
So you're saying it really is game over for John Wick?
I think so, but also because John's death fits within the major themes of John Wick. Religion and biblical symbology is a heavy thematic device throughout the John Wick films. There are tons of church scenes. Blood is used to signify commitments, and religious symbols are often used to showcase characters' true loyalties. Most of the characters in Wick's world are named after religious figures. Caine is a direct reference to the Greek ferryman of the dead, which is fitting for a man who serves assassins. The Continental uses a signature gold coin as currency for its amenities, just like the coins used to pay the ferryman by the ancient Greeks and the Boondock Saints.
In Greek and Roman mythology, when you died, you'd have to pay the toll to Caine, the boatman.
Ares in Chapter 2 is named after the Greek god of war, Marcus is a reference to the Apostle Mark, and even John Wick himself is a reference to the Apostle John, as he was, like Peter, a rock that Vigo built his church upon after he completed his impossible task. This theme continues in Chapter 4 with Caine, the blind badass played by Donnie Yen.
Wait, didn't he also play that in Rogue One?
Almost exactly, and like that character, his blindness is more than just a quirk.
Is your foot all right?
Wick's world is run by the eye for an eye assassin philosophy.
An eye for an eye, John. You know how it goes.
When he tells Mr. Nobody that he gave his eyes to the high table, he becomes a literal interpretation of the phrase and is forced to blindly follow the high table's orders. His name is not only a reference for the Caine that he uses, but also to the biblical character who killed his own brother out of pride, while in Wick's world this pride was personified by the Marquis.
Makes sense. A marquee person means they're very important. So you'd have to have a pretty big ego to call yourself Mr. Very Important.
Exactly, and having only 4 films makes even more sense when you look at the themes through a biblical lens. Each film in the franchise follows the 4 major story beats of the Bible, from the creation to the fall to redemption, and finally to restoration.
Like VeggieTales?
Not quite. The first movie represents creation as John is reborn through blood back into the High Table's world after he seemingly has gotten out. Chapter 2 is the fall of man, as John breaks the rules after fulfilling his blood bond commitments. Parabellum presents the consequences of these actions, and through the meetings with the Elder, John is seemingly redeemed. Of course, that all changes when Winston tries to redeem himself as well as shooting John. Chapter 4 takes a bold take on restoration. The entire film is about him making things right with his family and granting himself Victoria Fiduciae.
Victoria Fiduciae, what's that?
Victoria Fiduciae. It's Latin for victory in faith. By being granted Victoria Fiduciae, he is relinquished from all obligations under the high table, as if he's being baptized into a new life. He archives restoration with his family by avenging the death of the director.
I'm going to kill you.
But the biggest element of restoration comes at the end, when he dies free of his debt to the high table. By killing the Marquis, he kills the personification of ego, which is yet another reference to baptism.
If you kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
Baptism is often referred to as the death of ego, since those receiving it must let go of their earthly ego and give their life over to God. This is validated in the Bible when John the Baptist says, "He," that's Jesus, "must become greater and I must become less." Baptism just before death wasn't unheard of in the days of the early church. Constantine actually had a priest follow him around in his later years of his life just to baptize him right before he died so that he could be assured that he would still get into heaven.
Hashtag Constantine 2 confirmed.
Finally, the reason we think this is the end for John Wick is because of the influences behind the film. At South by Southwest, Chad Stahelski stated that the John Wick series is a love letter to Sergio Leone's samurai movies and Walter Hill's The Warriors. Like the Wick series, these are stories about seeking vengeance and restoring their honor to achieve a good death, which is precisely what Chapter 4 delivered and confirmed by the Shimazu in the movie.
But a good death only comes after a good life.
In fact, there are several lines of dialogue that foreshadow John's death. The Marquis refers to him as a ghost without a grave. John says that he's saying hello to his wife at the church. He tells Winston that he wants his tombstone to read, and even the Elder tells him that the only way John will find peace is through death.
Yeah, not really.
Which is a reference to this line from Abram in Chapter 2.
Mir.
And this one from Parabellum.
See this back in. Parabellum.
He also stated in a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter, "In our minds, Keanu and I are done for the moment. We're going to give John Wick a rest. I'm sure the studio has a plan." But he also followed with, "We'll do a couple of 20-year-old whiskeys and write some ideas on napkins. If those ideas stick, maybe we'll make a movie."
This guy is the king of mixed signals, I swear.
Yeah, he really is. Additionally, in Parabellum, the Elder asked John,
Why do you wish to live?
It's a fair question because John has nothing left to lose. Loss is such a heavy theme throughout all these films, and each time John loses more and more. He loses his car and his dog in Chapter 1. His house in Chapter 2. And his family in Chapter 3.
You can never come home again.
And now he's got nothing left. In Parabellum, John answers the Elder with,
My wife, Helen. To remember her.
which is exactly what he does in his final moments by saying her name as his last words. Keanu actually stated that this scene was his favorite scene to film because it felt like he brought the character full circle. Keanu actually lost his girlfriend in a car accident in 2001, so Wick's journey has always been very personal for him. If he feels that his character has come full circle, that's the most compelling evidence yet. Chapter 4 also gave us plenty of avenues where the franchise could go, even without Keanu in the spotlight. Mr. Nobody, aka the Tracker, could be our new protagonist, and the fact that he's accompanied by man's best friend validates that even further.
That would be nuts.
Nice one, high five. In Wick's world, we are constantly being told,
Our rules. They are the only things that separate
And
us.
the animals.
Or that's very rude.
I know, but it also means that those with connections to animals have some frayed connection to the High Table's rules. Sophia puts her loyalty to her friends and her dogs above the rules of the High Table since she honors John's marker even when she doesn't have to.
After this, we are less than even.
The Bowery King and his pigeons play by the rules but in their own unique way.
I am the Bowery! I am all that you deign not to look at when you walk down the street at night.
And John uses horses for transportation when he's excommunicado. Even somebody as ardently devoted to the rules as Caine is able to bend the rules of the hotel by watching John's dog.
He was a good dog. I have enjoyed his company.
And similarly, he bends the rules of the High Table when he assists Winston in defending the Continental.
And you, Jonathan, do what you do best.
What's that?
Hunt.
The Tracker plays the High Table's game almost better than they do and rarely uses the facilities available to him through the Continental. Like the others, he has loyalties that he holds above the High Table, some of which seem to be his own personal aspirations, giving him more of an anti-hero vibe.
Wick will ever have freedom and peace.
He feels almost like a variant of Wick, and all he needs is a tragedy to avenge.
Or, even better, make a series where the dog isn't just an accessory to the human's journey.
Well, maybe they do a spin-off series focused on the dog.
Ooh, I'd watch the heck out of that.
Me too. Now, we also see from the post-credits scene that Caine and Akira's stories are far from over. And while the ballerina is set before Chapter 4, its heroine could be a potential candidate to carry on Wick's legacy. Now, there's more than one way the torch could be passed here, so while the Chapter 4 may be the end for John, there are still plenty of stories to be told in Wick's world.
Well, if he's already dead, what's his final kill count?
We counted 140 confirmed kills in Chapter 4, which is more than any of his previous films, bringing Wick's total kill count to 339.
Ooh, that's one heck of a KD.
Right? So, what did you guys think? Is John Wick really dead? Who would you like to see take his place? Any important details that we missed or you have questions, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.